I want to show you one of the best ways to handle financial objections so that you can implement this right away in your sales process to increase cash collected and move the sale forward. I'm George Mezes. I run Mezes Agency, where we help coaches, agencies, and info products scale to 80K per month with proven marketing and sales systems. I've coached and partnered with over 300 online service providers. So let me show you how this works. This is the open wallet objection handling framework. So this document is going to help you deploy a reliable framework in your sales process that you can use at all times when you get a financial objection or you're taking deposit. So I want to emphasize this all the time I make a sales video, is that sales is not something that you do to people. It's something that we do for people. So it's not some sneaky sales tactic that you can just use to manipulate people into buying your product, but an actual framework that helps you address the main concerns the prospect has so you can better align your offer and help them make the best decision moving forward. Like, that's what we're doing here. Now, where are you in the sales process? So you're working at the very end of the call here. You've dropped the price, the prospect broke the ice, and he gave you a financial objection. Now, a financial objection could look like this. It sounds great, but it's pretty steep. Do you guys have payment plans? I can't afford it. It's too expensive. That's not in my budget right now. It sounds good. It's just, I just need to move some funds around. That's way out of my current capabilities. Right? That would put me in a tough financial position. And I'm not spending another, X, $100,000, whatever is your service price. Hopefully it's not 100K. After you drop the price, regardless of what the prospect says, you always have to go through WPT and then CWIPC frameworks. So in WPT, you paste and handle the first objection, and then CWIPC, you actually isolate and handle that set objection. So if you don't know what these frameworks are, just go and check out those videos out first on my YouTube channel and then go back to this, because it's going to be a linear order. So after you drop the price, you always go through WPT, worth the possible timeline, and then CWIPC, which is context, isolate, permission, challenge. So the reason why we do this is because we cannot talk about finances if we don't have the prospect 100% bought into the process. So first, we're always making sure that the prospect is certain about what you have to offer, and he's 100% certain that this is the right thing and now is the right time, like 100% certainty. Because the prospect is uncertain and he has some kind of underlying issues or, other like concerns about your services or about themselves, we cannot talk about finances. No payment plans are going to help you move forward with that sale, because again, an uncertain prospect is confused, and a confused mind never buys. So that's that. So we always handle the objection that they give with WPT first to see what objection we're dealing with, whether it's uncertainty, finances, spouse, partner, right? And if you get uncertainty, you have to handle that right there. Because again, we need to have the prospect bought into your process, so 100% that this is the right thing and now is the right time. Those are the two most important things when it comes to certainty. Now, once you get that, you slide into CWIPC to isolate and handle the actual objection. So let's just say that the prospect is actually certain about your process, about themselves. He's 100% bought in that this is the right thing and now is the right time. But he gives you a financial objection that this would be really tough to make it happen for him. He would have to move some funds around, or it's just not the right time in terms of finances. In and of itself, he couldn't pay in full is what I'm saying here. So we want to make sure that we're only handling financial objections and not uncertainty, because they were giving us a smokescreen. A lot of time, prospects are going to give you smokescreen. I'm not saying that they're lying, but they're not addressing the real concerns that they have. So it's your responsibility to dig deeper, and that's why we have these frameworks in place, because when you go through WPT, worth the possible timeline, you're giving so many chances, and also CWIPC, you're giving so many chances to the prospect to open up about what concerns they have about specifically your program, your deliverables, and everything else along the lines of those. So I'm going to give you examples here in this video as well on how WPT and CWIPC would work out for an objection, a financial objection specifically. So bear with me to the end. But I just wanted to point that out. If you're not 100% familiar with these frameworks, just go check out those videos and make sure to internalize them, because that's going to be essentially the main concept here. Now, once you get what objection you're dealing with, whether it's uncertainty, finances, spouse, partner, which you get from WPT, then you slide into CWIPC again to isolate and handle that objection. So where does the open wallet framework come into place? I'm going to touch on that in a bit, but I want to tell you what the purpose is. So again, we help the prospect with flexible payment terms to be able to afford a deal again and again, move the sale forward. Because again, not all prospects can pay in full, but that doesn't mean that they shouldn't buy. Because again, if you're 100% certain that this is the right thing for them, and also now is the right time, but they're just a little in just a bad position financially, you can help them with breaking up that payment to actually move the deal forward if you think that they're really a good fit for your program, if that makes sense. So you only use it when you got certainty from the prospect. Again, I cannot emphasize it enough. You got certainty from the prospect that he's 100% aligned and he believes that this is the right thing and now's the right time, right? Super, super important. And it's just purely financial constraints that they're facing. If they're uncertain, you have to handle it there. Now, how you would do that? Again, I'm going to give you an example, but anytime you're challenging the prospect, you ask for permission first. Why? Because if you don't, then it's going to be you versus me scenario where you didn't ask for my opinion and I'm just like rebuttalish and giving you a whole like, belief system and challenging your belief system. It's just not going to work out. Whereas if I ask for permission, like, can I point something out? Sure, obviously. If the prospect says yes, and 100% of the times you're going to say yes, then, you go into the challenge and actually reframe their thinking. But it's imperative that you ask for permission first, because again, if the prospect asks for you, for your opinion, they ask for it. Like they cannot take it to heart, because again, it's like they agreed for you to challenge them, if that makes sense. Super, super important. But again, I'm going to touch on that a little bit later on this video. So at any point, if the prospect asks you about payment plans or payment terms, or in fact, anything other than your program, your deliverables, you don't say no, you don't say yes, it depends. No, yes, no, it depends. Like, we're not just handing out payment plans to anybody. Like, they have to work for it. So payment plans are your secret weapon that you don't just give out to anybody. Like, they have to be 100% bought into your process for your generosity to allow different payment terms as to what others are paying. Because again, they're 100% right fit for your program. And so you're helping them with moving forward. But it doesn't mean that we're giving payment plans out to everybody. Number one, first of all, because you want to increase cash collected in the first call or in the second call or whatever it is, right? But the first time they pay, you have to increase cash collected. And obviously, you want the prospect to be committed to the program. And money is the vehicle for commitment, because obviously, if someone comes into the program with just depositing $100 versus someone who is actually paying in full, guess who's going to be more committed to the program? Obviously, the latter, the one who paid $5,000. So that's that. Now, if the prospect is 100% committed and he's certain that this is the right thing and now's the right time, you can move into handling the actual financial objection. So again, remember, we paste the first objection, we paste uncertainty, we know that the prospect is certain, so we know that we can isolate and actually talk about finances now. So just a side note here. When you're having a conversation in open wallet, that means that you went through WPT, CIIPC, and obviously the whole discovery, transition, pitch. Now, this means that the prospect trusts you. So if you're in open wallet, talking about the finances in the specific situation financially about the prospect, he trusts you. He opens up to you and he's willing to open up about finances to make this work. So if you're operating at this stage of the call, it means that everything that led up until this point, you've done right. Because again, it made sure that the prospect trusts you and is fully committed to your product. Super, super important. So just make sure that you know this. If you're operating at this stage of the call, you did something right all the way up until this point. Now, when you get a financial objection, you want to see the full picture. So again, I see this all the time, like people just assume everything on a sales call and they just don't ask for it. And, sometimes obviously the prospect is telling us like a lot of stuff in discovery. And so I want to emphasize this, regardless of the prospect telling you he has $100K in his savings account, you still need to do open wallet. And let me tell you why. Because at this point, you're not only operating as a sales rep, you're operating as their advisor, as their coach, right? You're going to coach them anyway in your program or in your agency. And so in order for you to make a valid assessment to what the best decision would be for the prospect, you need to see the full picture. Because again, how you would give a valid assessment if you don't know the full picture and you would just advise to take it out of his savings account, where it would not be the best, possible option for him, for example. So sometimes, and this is the perfect example, sometimes prospects who have a lot of cash, they'll also have a higher credit score. So you can advise them to reserve cash and rather leverage credit. Because again, cash is the lifeline of the business. So why not just leverage credit to pay for something like this, right? So it would be a different perspective as to someone just has $100K in savings account and you don't go into open wallet and you're just assuming that they can take it out from there. Or maybe they have resistance of touching that savings account because they call it savings account for a reason, right? So that's that. Now, let me give you a full example of the open wallet framework and how you would handle this in a financial objection. And I'm going to also go through the WPT and so you can see how that plays out, and also the CIIPC, because again, I want to take it from you dropping the price. So obviously I'm going to be you, but I'm also going to play the prospect. And so we're going to go through this Socratic dialogue, if that makes sense. So you're dropping the price. So Mr. Prospect, so for you to go from where you're currently to where you want to go, obviously desired outcome, you would just insert those here. They're just placeholders here. And have all the systems and processes in place. It's just 15K. And you just shut up. You don't say how you want to move forward. You don't say like, what do you think about that? No, you just hold frame, you lean back, shut up. Now, why do we do that? Why do we don't say like, why do we don't break the ice as the sales rep? Again, because we want the prospect to internalize what just happened. Like we went through this whole process from discovery, transition, pitch, and now we're at the very close. And the prospect has like this whole thought process of, okay, I'm getting this value for this much. Now there's a price tag attached to it. Like let them have that sink in. Like let them have that internalized. Like, okay, I want to, from here, I want to get to here. And this is the price, and this is how I'm going to get there. Like they need to be able to connect that price point to the value so that they can have this assessment, whether it makes sense or not. So again, you shut up and always let the prospect break the ice. And, you know, the prospect says something along the lines of these, like, do you guys have payment plans? Or again, any of this stuff, like it's pretty steep. I can afford it. It's too expensive. And then you just slide into it, right? So let's just suppose that the prospect says, do you guys have payment plans? Again, not yes, not no. It depends. So we go into WPT, which is first worth it. Well, it depends. Let me ask you this. Do you see the value? Like, do you think that this specific system and the process could get you to where you want to go? Obviously, again, you would insert the desired outcome here again. The prospect answers, yeah, 100% is just, too much for me right now. Okay. Again, we ask why. Why do you think that it would make sense for you to have the system and process in place? Again, why do we do that? We want the prospect to sell us. We want the prospect to sell themselves. We want them to internalize why it would make sense for them to have these systems and processes in place. We want them to be emotional. We want them to really think about what would it make for them to be in that desired outcome, if that makes sense. Cool. All right, got it. Now we're moving to possible. Worth it, possible timeline. We're going to possible. Got it. And would the 15K be possible for right now? No, not right now. It's just too much for me right now. Okay, got it. Again, we go into timeline. When would it be possible? I'm not sure, I just need to move some funds around or, sign more clients before I could afford something like this. Okay. So this is the WPT, worth it, possible timeline. Well, it depends. Let me ask you this. Do you see the value? Is it worth it? Do you feel that this specific system and process could get you to where you want to go? Why? Possible. Got it. Would the 15K be possible for you right now? Would the 15K be possible for you right now? And then timeline. When would it be possible? What's your timeline, right? And so again, what are we doing in the WPT? Again, I really advise you to check out that other video on WPT specifically because I go more in depth about this. But we're looking for certain tonality and certain lingo. Because again, let's just say that a prospect says something like, yeah, I guess it probably would make sense for me. Like, I don't see why it wouldn't make sense for me to move forward with something like this, right? So it's like, was that certain? Absolutely not. The lingo wasn't certain. The tonality wasn't certain. So there's some underlying concern that the prospect is not really revealing us, right? So it's like, we need to stop right there. We cannot continue with the framework because, again, if the prospect is uncertain, we need to reveal what's going on. We need to call that out. Again, first you ask for permission and then you ask for the challenge. Like, all right, can I point something out? Sure. Like, you hesitated. You don't sound so confident. What's going on, right? And then the prospect is either going to, again, tell you a smoke screen or he's going to be revealing the real concern, which you can handle that right there. But again, that's a whole separate video on how to handle uncertainty-based objections because, again, it's like different talk tracks that come with it, but we always want to nail it down or boil it down to just fewer nerves at the end of the day. But that's a whole separate video. Now, let's just suppose that the prospect is actually certain. It's really just financial. So we got certainty from all three answers, worth it, possible timeline. And then now we can move into CIIPC, context, isolate, permission challenge, which is actually going to isolate the financial objection that we're dealing with here and then tie it down to make sure that the prospect really doesn't have any other concerns. Because again, with these frameworks, we're giving so many chances to the prospect to open up and just surpass the smoke screen. Because again, if you're handling smoke screen, we're not handling the real concerns. And again, the close is not going to happen. The prospect is not going to buy. If we don't handle the real concern, because either we missed it or they're not revealing it to us, we're not going to be able to close the deal, period. That's it. So hence why we have these frameworks in linear order. So now that we have an idea that we're dealing with financial objections here, and the prospect is actually certain that this is the right thing and now is the right time, we can move into CIIPC to actually handle and isolate that financial objection. So the prospect says to the timeline, I'm not sure, I just need to move some funds around and sign more clients before I could afford something like this. Okay, got it. So when you say you cannot afford something like this, like, what do you mean exactly, right? We always get context first, regardless whether you got context in WPT. We always ask for more context because, again, we want to give the prospect chances to open up about what concerns they actually have specifically to finances. So what is that? Like, give me something to work with. Give me more, right? Well, I don't have the funds that I could deploy into this. It could be as simple as that. Okay, got it. So we're going to isolate, the first isolate yes or no. It's going to be an yes or no answer. Got you. So it's really just a matter of making it work for you financially, right? Yes or no. And if they say no, again, at least we have something to work with because, again, they're revealing that they have some other concern that we can address right here. If they say yes, then we move into isolation, which is going to be an open-ended answer. Got it. So other than this, is there anything else that's keeping you from being less than 100% that this is what you want to do right now? No. Again, if they say yes, they're revealing the actual concern and they've surpassed the smokescreen. If they're giving flat out concrete certain answers like yes, no, there's nothing else, it's literally just finances, that now that we isolated the actual objection and we know that we're dealing with this for sure. So that's the idea behind CIIPC. Now, permission. We're moving to permission. So I don't know why it's not here. Let me just actually write this real quick. And then we move into permission. Again, before we challenge, we always ask for permission. Got it. Can I share a perspective here? Sure. Most of our clients do take care of the investment in full upfront, but for certain clients, I can understand that it's not possible. And I also don't feel like that would be the best thing for them either based on their current financial situation. So we allow them to break it up. Now, that being said, since it's your goal to do this now and you're 100% in, again, we want to re-emphasize that. Do you want to explore ways we could potentially break it up for you to make this work? Again, why do we ask that? We want certainty from the client. Again, now that we emphasize that they're 100% in and it's literally just finances, and if they want to be open about exploring ways that we could potentially break it up so that they want to move forward with this. Now, again, if they say no, there's a smoke screen. They've been giving us smoke screen all the way up until this point, and now we have the real concern. Because, again, just right before we would move into actually talking about finances, this is something that we need to make sure, again, that they're tied down and this literally just finances. And so when we're generous and opening up about that we could potentially break it up for them, the payment, they should be really happy, because if they're 100% bought in, they should be really happy and thanking you. And it should be visible on them that, you're generous to them. So that's how you know that they're actually bought into the process. Yes, that would be great. That would be a cool answer that you want to hear from the prospect. Yes, that would be great. Thank you. And then you would say, great. We don't actually have any set payment plans. It really is all customized depending on what's best for the client. So based on where you're at financially, it might be possible for us to make something work now, or at the very worst, we can create a game plan for you to work towards in the future. Now, a couple of things here. Why do we do that? Why do we say, or at the very worst, we can create a game plan for you to work towards in the future? Because, again, we want to let our guards down and also the prospects guard down. Like, no pressure, dude, if this is something that you can actually don't do right now because it's just too much financial constraints, then we can create a game plan for the future. So it's like lowering the pressure that they actually have to make a decision, right? That's why we do that. Now, when we say it's all customized and we don't have any set payment plans, obviously you can have set payment plans, but we, as the company, would need to, again, increase cash collected in the first call to also make sure that we're increasing cash collected, plus to make sure that the prospect is coming in with a 100% committed mindset. Because regardless of them being committed and they're telling us concrete answers, again, money is just going to be a vehicle for commitment, and that's it. If they pay more, obviously they're going to be more committed to your program, they're going to get better results, and your reputation is on the line. So again, this is super, super important. So you want to make sure that you customize what's best for the client. So they should be paid anything that they can afford and wouldn't put them in a tough financial position. So if they can break it up, or you can break it up for 2 pay, then you should do 2 pay. Because if you do 3 pay, again, the client is going to be, or the prospect is going to be less committed Plus, you just missed out on increasing your cash collected. Super, super important. Prospect says, all right, I'm open. And so the prospect basically says that he's open to having, like a chat about payment plans on how we could potentially break this up. So he agrees to this. Again, if he doesn't agree, he's been giving us smoke screen all the time, and now we can actually handle the real concern here. Now, let's just see that he says, all right, we can do that. So you say, all right, so are you comfortable with having an open and honest conversation about exactly where you are at financially right now? And based on that, we can figure out what's best from here. Cool? Yes or no. Again, smoke screen, yes or no, we handle that right there. After we have this, we inform the prospect that we don't have any set payment plans, and we lower the guard and lower the pressure that they don't need to make a decision on this, basically. And at the very worst, we can create a game plan for them to work towards in the future, if that makes sense. Cool. Prospect is happy. Prospect actually feels that you're generous because you want to help them make the best decision here. Now, before we actually go into open wallet, right, the open wallet framework, we want to make sure, again, that the prospect is comfortable with having an open and honest conversation. Super, super key terms, guys. You always use this. Having an open and honest conversation about exactly where you're at financially. And based on that, we can figure out what's the best next step from here. Again, we laid down that we want to help them make the best decision. So that's why we want to have a chat about that. They agreed. And now we're making sure that they're open to having an open and honest conversation about where they're at exactly. And based on that, we can figure out something. Cool. If they agreed, you have the green light, and then you can go into open wallet. And again, guys, I just want to re-emphasize this, that when you're operating in open wallet, that means that everything that led up to this part, you've done right because the prospect fully trusts you. Super, super important. Super great, guys. Super great work if you're operating here. So the open wallet framework finally got to here. First, we go into business cash flow, then we go into personal cash flow, then savings, and into credit. So first, business cash flow. Okay, so what's your business cash flow exactly right now? Again, the prospect tells you what their cash flow is. Again, if they're rebuttalish, which is, if you're at this point, it's super, super, super rare, but some prospects are going to ask you, like, what's the point of you asking that? And again, you just loop back to saying, you just a minute ago, you told me you were open to having an honest conversation, because how can I, is it a crazy idea for me as a coach to get a valid assessment on what your current situation is financially so that I can, best figure out a game plan for you? Obviously they're going to say no. Why would it be a crazy idea? And so you just always go back to the logic as to they agreed to having an open and honest conversation. So then we go into personal cash flow. Gotcha. And in terms of personal cash flow, what do you have available exactly? Cool. They give it a number, right? And then we go into savings. Gotcha. And cash flow is ultimately the lifeblood of your business. So in a lot of cases, it's important that we reserve that, we protect that, right? So that said, how much do you have in your savings account, right? We want to see if they have mattress money or, money just chilling somewhere in a savings account, whatever, right? Cool. Got it. And then do you have access to credits or funds to fund your business? Yes, no. Obviously, everyone's going to have credit. What's your credit score? How much cards do you have? What's available at each line? And obviously, this is something you wouldn't say, but this is for you to just get an idea of what a good credit score is. So anything above 670 is good, and they can leverage credit. Now, obviously, it's going to depend on how many cards they have and how many what's the availability at each line. But essentially, this gives you a really good idea as to what advice to give the prospect. So this is what we call open wallet: business cash flow, personal cash flow, savings, and credit. With this, you have the full picture, and you can literally advise the prospect on what the best thing would be to move forward. So after open wallet, you're going to actually giving your thoughts and giving your advice, given the fact that you now have the full picture, and now you say what you believe would be the best next step from here. That your product is the best thing for the prospect, and that was the right thing, and that was the right time. They should pay in full, period. They should pay in full. And if you think that he's 100% committed and 100% a good fit for your program and financially qualified, everybody should buy. Everybody should buy. That's a rule of thumb. If not the biggest program, then something smaller, like a downsell. But if they're 100% committed and you really think that this is 100% aligned with them and is a good fit for them, everybody should buy. Period. That's it. And then you would say something like, obviously when you're giving advice, Okay, great. So here's what I would do if I were you based on what you just told me here. So I would cover the investment in full, but I would put it on the credit card. And here's why. Obviously, you always want to give reasons. You just don't say like, hey, just pay in full, right? Because they're not going to understand why. It's going to sound salesy because obviously every sales guy wants the prospect to pay in full. So you always give reasons. Here's why. Number one, the people that go all in and make the commitment make the most results. And number two, you have this cash available. And again, cash flow is the lifeline of your business. So you would leverage credit and reserve cash. What do you think about that? You always ask, what do you think about that? We want to get the prospect to agree or, maybe share a different perspective. But again, if you're operating at this stage, you need to see what's the most amount that they can afford to put into the program. That obviously wouldn't put them in a tough financial position. And then you can do 2Pay, 3Pay. I wouldn't really recommend doing more than 3Pay because again, it's just going to decrease your cash collected because, if people churn out or they don't finish your program or they just disappear out of nowhere, then that's going to be lost revenue, if that makes sense, or lost cash, better to say. So this is the framework, guys. Happy hunting with it. I really advise you to go through the WPT and CIIPC videos on the channels as well, because it's going to give you the fundamentals to handle the financial objection frameworks. If you're struggling with sales, feel free to check out the first link in the description below. I'm sure you will find great value. I wish you guys have an amazing day. Thanks for watching. Cheers.